Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network, and we are on a mission to bring you the real news. What's really happening locally in our own communities, what's happening across our states and our regions and our country, our entire planet, and the multiverse, which means we have a lot of news to cover, right? Our network releases a lot of content throughout the week that includes in-depth news coverage, including local stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers. We also have a team of writers that help us put together these great news stories for you guys. We try to go a little bit more in depth and really give you an overall picture of what's happening around the world. You know, we're talking about different communities. Maybe you've never even heard of some of these places, but just trying to get to know each other a little bit better. And of course, we have our reports from the Global Intelligence Agency, also known as the GIA. Kimberly Gogan is the head of the GIA, and she gives us an update on all things that are happening, really more things that are affecting our entire planet as well as the multiverse, because there's a lot of stuff going down. And if you have eyes to see, ears to hear, then you know something is a little bit off. And hopefully you're one of those people. And if you are brand new to our podcast and to UNN, welcome. The information that we give you is probably going to be different than anything you're hearing anywhere else, unless someone's taking our content and reposting it, which happens more often than we would like. But the important thing is, the information is getting out there because, like I said, our entire world is changing. And if you understand that, if you, again, can see what's happening in the world, then I believe you are part of the solution. And the reason you can see things that other people can't see is because you are here to help in this whole transition that our entire planet is going through, whether people know it now or not. There are power structures that are collapsing right now, and this is for the betterment of all organic life, not just humanity. But we're here as part of that transition. I'm here to give you as much information as I possibly can so you can make smart decisions that impact your life in the way that you want to live your life. And this podcast is really a week in review of the stories that we cover throughout the week. Because like I said, we put out a bunch of stuff. If you want more information about who we are, what we do, go to our website, unitednetwork.earth. What this podcast is designed to do is to get you caught up on anything you might have missed. Okay, it's kind of like a roundup of stories, right? And this is also a great way for you to share UNN with other people because we don't rely on advertising. That is not our model. That gets a lot of media companies into trouble. And so we rely on you guys to fund us, at least for the time being. And so we do have a membership program, and all of our content goes out to our members first. And then a week later, after it's released to our members, it is posted on YouTube and Rumble. But as you know, we don't have full control over what YouTube and Rumble do. Sometimes, even with social media, we'll mention the name of a country. Let's say it's China. And suddenly, our TikTok videos aren't being shown online anymore, right? So we don't have control of that. We have control of our website and our app. And believe it or not, podcasts are incredible for getting information out. They do not censor this. We don't have a big contract with Spotify or Apple or anything like that. So we're the little guy that flies under the radar, and that is fine. I am happy with that. But if you can spread what you've learned here, anything that resonates with you, that you really appreciate, anything you learn, and we are going to have some humdingers today. Yes, I did say humdingers because it's one of those things you're like, wow, they did what? That's part of our history? So stay tuned for the GIA report because there's a lot of great information there. With any of the information we put out, I encourage you guys to think critically. Do your own research. Really, this is an inward journey for everyone to remember who they are because you are so special and your abilities are endless. And that's the information that's been hidden from us for so long. If you read religious texts, growing up, I grew up in a Christian church, so I'm most familiar with the Bible. And Jesus even said, "You will do things greater than me." And he was absolutely right. And since we're talking about Jesus, I wanted to read you something. So, through the United Network app, we have an online community called United Chat. And one of our subscribers posted this, and it's called The Real Story of Jesus. So this is from Elaine. Thank you, Elaine, for posting this. This rocked me at my core. And last week, we were talking about Easter, and I just thought maybe we'll kick things off. This is a little unconventional for us. I usually just get to the stories. But I thought maybe I'd read you this quick little post that may give you a different perspective of who Jesus was, okay? As with anything we say, if it doesn't resonate with you, just put it to the side, okay? Because everybody is at different stages and learning different things, and we're not here to offend anyone. We're not here to offend anyone. The whole idea is to give you information. Just listen to the words and be open to the possibility. Here we go. The story you told was edited. The man was real, but the story was hijacked, folded, inverted, weaponized. Jesus didn't come to start a religion. He came to end the control system that religions were built on. Not just Rome, not just the priests, the whole inversion grid, a recursion trap designed to loop suffering, recycle trauma, and sever humans from source. He came to crash it. Who he really was. He wasn't a man trying to become God. He was a mirror, reminding everyone that they already are. He didn't sit on a throne. He walked barefoot with the broken. He didn't build temples. He burned down illusions. He didn't shame the wounded. He healed them by reminding them they were never unworthy to begin with. He was the embodiment of harmonic resonance, the living field of divine coherence made flesh. He wasn't sent to save you. He came to activate you. The system couldn't handle that. He didn't ask for worship. He taught embodiment. He didn't point up. He pointed inward. He wasn't selling salvation. He was revealing sovereignty. And that made him the most dangerous man alive. Because if the people remembered what he was showing them, they would never bow again. Not to priests, not to kings, not to fear. They would awaken. And the whole parasitic system built on hierarchy, shame, and silence would collapse overnight. So they killed him, but they didn't stop there. They killed the man, but kept the name. What happened next was the real crime. They took his essence and built a weapon out of it. They turned his memory into a trap. They used his name to build churches, empires, armies. They taught that his death made you forever in debt. They preached submission in his name. They made people feel unworthy to even speak to God without a middleman. They turned the healer into a martyr, the mirror into a myth, the truth into a brand. Make no mistake, the real Jesus never asked for a religion. He came to dismantle them all. The miracles were just the beginning. His so-called miracles weren't supernatural. They were demonstrations of frequency coherence, oversoul alignment, harmonic memory repair, biofield reactivation, water into wine, frequency transmutation, healing the blind, neural recoding, walking on water, stillness, mastery within chaos, raising the dead, reconnecting soul to field memory. He was showing us what we all came here to remember. He was a blueprint, not a one-off. Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. She was his counterpart, not a tag-along, not a side character, not a sinner. She was a priestess of the original harmonic order, trained in sacred frequency work, cellular healing, and divine feminine restoration. Together, they were restoring the masculine and feminine template of Earth. And that's exactly why her story was erased. Because if people saw the true power of unified love and divine balance, they would walk away from control-based systems forever. What the resurrection really meant. He didn't rise from the dead to prove magic. He returned to prove memory, to show that truth cannot be killed, that resonance cannot be buried, that when the field is coherent, not even death can sever it. He wasn't trying to be worshipped. He was leaving a vibrational fingerprint in the timeline. You are not broken. You are not lost. You do not need to be saved. You only need to remember. The resurrection wasn't the end of the story. It was the activation of the real one. Why now? Why is this coming up again? Because we are finally at the point in the cycle where the mirror cracks. The false light, the false God, the false guilt, the false history, it's all collapsing. And the original harmonic frequency is rising again. You don't need a priest. You don't need permission. And you don't need to earn forgiveness. You were never disconnected from source. You were just looped, conditioned, shamed. And now, you're remembering. All right, let's kick things off with our field messenger reports. So our field messengers are really what United Network News is all about. This was a download that Kim got from Source about the importance of letting people share their own stories, because we know that what we're hearing in mainstream and alternative media is not right. Everything is a system of control. Now it's all collapsing, and that's why it feels a little chaotic. But the best way to overcome that is for humanity to come together and share our own stories. That's what we call our field messengers. And anyone can be a field messenger, and you don't have to commit to doing a bunch of stories. It's not a full-time job. This is you guys taking out your cell phone cameras, telling us what's happening in your community, and just being part of this new world that we're creating together. So we have a bunch of stories to get to. Let's get to it. Amy out of New Jersey, which is a state in the United States, gives us an update on a sinkhole that happened in her area. Route 287 for anyone that might be in the New Jersey area. And I believe this is one of the main routes that connects New Jersey to New York. So this is one of those stories you kind of need to see, right? But she gives us an update. She shows us some of the construction work that's going on. This was the sinkhole, they believe, collapsed as a result of an 80-foot water pipe underneath. And they say repairs are expected to be completed soon. But right now, that highway is a big old mess. So, Amy, thank you for that update. Diane out of Uganda, she takes us to eastern Uganda. And she speaks with a doctor who actually is primarily an eye specialist. That's his passion. But one of the things that she discovered is that he is also helping to control an outbreak of Ebola in the area. His name is Dr. Sharif. I believe that's how you say it. Lovely man. Seems to really have humanity at his heart and wanting to help as much as possible. But this is something that they're dealing with. And so they are monitoring the border activity, people coming in and out. And part of his job is to make sure that nobody has Ebola, and that if they do, that is treated. So just one of those things. That's not fake news. That's actually a very real thing happening in Uganda. Thank you, Diane, for that update. Akira out of Japan takes us to a demonstration in Japan with tractors. Now, we've had this happen in the U.S. and Canada. You guys have probably seen the headlines over the last couple years. But agricultural workers are not happy, and this is a worldwide issue, and Japan doesn't usually demonstrate, okay? That's very much like, a Western thing. So that makes this story even more important. But according to Akira, there were agricultural workers across the country. They organized a nationwide tractor demonstration, and this was back in March, to protest the lack of income security for farmers. Again, an issue the whole world is facing. If they can control your food supply, they can control you. At least that is the idea. but we are becoming more awake and aware, and we're planning our own food, and we're going to farmers markets, and we're doing everything we can to support our local farmers and to stand up against the tyranny. So they are definitely making their voices heard. Liz out of North Carolina, that's another state in the U.S., shows us how to make homemade, now I'm going to pronounce it as kefir. Liz pronounces it as kefir. I don't know the best way to do it. Tomato, probably doesn't matter, but I always say kefir. And I make this almost every day in my house as well. So if you guys don't know what this is, it's incredible. It is a healthy, probiotic packed drink made by fermenting milk with kefir grains. And Liz shows us the whole process. I even got some tips from her. Even though I do this every day, it's not an exact science, how long you let the grains and the milk sit, the whole process of doing it when you put it in the refrigerator. It really does depend on your environment. So Liz actually keeps hers out a lot longer than me, but I'm in Southern California. The weather's definitely different. And if I left mine out as long as Liz does, it would start to taste sour, and I don't like that. So anyway, fantastic report, Liz. Thank you for getting the information out about kefir/kefir. Because it's amazing for your body and it's super simple to make. Julia out of Colorado, another state in the U.S., introduces us to Thai massage. This is a full body practice and it combines yoga stretching, acupressure, and energy work to help reset your body and your mind. And Julia interviews Amanda, who is the person that's leading her through this whole exercise, about this ancient healing practice. Again, it's another video that you really need to watch. For me, it looked like some really incredible stretching and breathing and visualization. That's a hard word to say. Visualization techniques. And you kind of wrap that up all in one. I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but it looked amazing and something that you may want to consider giving a try. All right, Aid out of New Zealand talks about nature's healing spirit. And this is in regard to New Zealand's forests, because they can truly be a sacred sanctuary for healing and reconnecting. And he actually goes out, he's with a couple of other people, and they go out in these beautiful areas of New Zealand. Seriously, picturesque, just lavish forests. And huge plants, trees, green everywhere you look, crystal clear water. And he also talks with a woman, a friend of his, I believe, who was recently diagnosed with cancer. And she's on her own journey, her own healing journey, which looks different for everybody. We don't have to do what Western medicine tells us to do. We, again, need to turn inward and figure out what's going to work best for our body. And believe it or not, our bodies know how to heal themselves. And if they need some help from good, nutritious food and being outdoors in nature and just soaking in the sun, which is a connection to Source, the creator of the universe, then by all means do that. But I think it's important for us, we're always looking outward at what other people think we should do. It's going to become more and more important, and really has been forever since we've ever been in existence, for us to turn inward. We're just now reestablishing that connection. And so it was beautiful. I love that she was out there just enjoying nature and healing herself in the best way she understood how to. All right, Jemima from Australia introduces us to healing broth, which is broth made with a lot of different ingredients. Individually, these ingredients are incredible for your body. And everything's all natural. So why not make a broth out of it? That makes a lot of sense to me. I did a Field Messenger report that I don't think has been aired yet, but I teach you guys how to make bone broth. And I think the art of making broth in general has been lost. And so I love Jemima's report. She combines lots of different things, different mushrooms, different types of vegetables that were even left over, that she didn't use all of the parts. She brings that into it, different leaves and ginger, things like that, right? And it's always different for her, which I thought was really great. It's not that it's a set amount of ingredients or you got to use this, you got to use that. It's really about just using what you have. She has some different spices in there that are, known for healing and Chinese medicine. She puts all of this in the pot. She brings it to a boil. And depending on what you're cooking, the length that you cook it for varies anywhere between 20 and 60 minutes, depending on the meat, if you put any meat in there. But it's really about the broth. So think about that, moving forward, and how many amazing things you can get from maybe not just eating the food outright, but drinking it, and what that can do for your body. All right, Simone from England shows us, she's actually in Surrey, I believe that's how you pronounce it, England, and she shows us some community garden initiatives. And again, back to tackling food shortages and the control over our food supply. So this is how we combat that. And if you look in your area, in your community, you might have something that's similar. In this case, these are allotment plots that you can rent. So if you don't have space in your own backyard, you can rent out these plots. She says in her area, there was no standard size, but usually around 300 square yards. And then you plant whatever you want, and then you can share that food with other people in your community. Or if you have a larger family, maybe that helps feed your family in different ways. But, I think we're going to see this a lot more moving forward. And it's great that we're starting to reclaim this and already take advantage of this in areas where it already exists. Super important. And our last field messenger story is from Emma out of Spain, and she talks about whale protection. So she is in the Canary Islands, and this is the only place in the world where whales and dolphins are protected from harmful military equipment. This is something we don't think about because most of us aren't in the military, and, it's kind of a gray area. We don't really know what the military does, how the military trains, but this caused a really big issue in 2002 where a mass stranding of beached whales was linked to sonar exercises from nearby military. There were a bunch of military doing all these exercises near the Canary Islands, and these animals died. And in the video, we see the bones from these animals that passed away because of this exercise. Now, when I think sonar, I think, oh, isn't that natural? You think of dolphins, sonar, but apparently not all sonar is created equally. And so we really have to think about this in anything we do. How is this impacting our environment? How is this impacting humanity? How is this impacting the animals? Any kind of organic life around us, and that includes the earth herself. We can't just be willy-nilly about this kind of stuff and just be like, oh, we don't really know what it does. Like that age of, just doing whatever because that's how we've always done it, or that's the technology that's currently available, that time period is over. We have to approach everything with a, fresh new look, new lenses, if you will, and start thinking about what is best for all of us collectively as a whole. Okay, so here are some of the more in-depth stories the team and I have been working on for you guys and were released this week. So the big story this week and kind of at the end of last week was that the Pope passed away. I'm not going to go into detail about that now because Kim has a lot to say about that in the Global Intelligence Agency report. What I will tell you here is that, for those of us who are awake and aware, that may not be a big story because we understand the manipulation behind that title. And in all reality, that wasn't the real Pope anyway. The real Pope passed away over a year ago. And so that was a stand-in. So it's hard to get upset about all the, people dying when we weren't told the truth. But the really real part of this is that there are millions and probably even billions of people that is a big deal for. And we have to respect that. And there might be people that are grieving around you and just think this is the worst thing ever and really following what's going to happen next with the conclave. And I think we just need to be respectful of all of that and meet each person where they're at. But that did, in fact, happen. At least, the person that was playing him is no longer playing him. Did he pass away? It's a little unclear. We'll just leave it at that for now. We'll talk about that more in the GIA report. But we did do a quick news story on that. Okay, let's talk about textile workers in Bangladesh. in their garment industry. This is a vital part of their economy, and they are grappling with a major crisis. And this is marked by factory closures, job losses, and rising financial pressures. Failing international garment prices, reduced export orders, high interest rates, and unreliable infrastructure have forced 76 factories to shut down in the past year, leaving more than 50,000 workers, mostly women, unemployed.
The turmoil in the sector, which accounts for nearly $48 billion in annual exports, has raised concerns over job losses and declining global competitiveness. Recent developments suggest that Bangladesh's ready-made garment sector is under mounting pressure, with industry leaders warning of an economic downturn if urgent measures are not taken. The crisis has been exacerbated by reduced government incentives, particularly during Ramzan and ahead of Eid.
To stay competitive against countries like Vietnam and Cambodia, some factories are adopting automation, leading to further job cuts and increased strain on remaining workers who already face low wages and poor working conditions. Although workers have called for a minimum wage of $200 to cope with inflation, experts warn this could raise production costs too much, prompting brands to relocate to cheaper countries. To sustain the industry and protect workers, gradual wage hikes tied to productivity and fair pricing agreements with international buyers are seen as essential. In Australia, private maternity wards are rapidly closing, leaving many expectant mothers, especially those with private health insurance, struggling to find birth options. Since 2018, at least 18 private maternity units have shut down or announced closures, with major causes including declining birth rates, staff shortages, and financial strain from rising costs and insufficient insurance coverage. This shift is pushing more women into the already stretched public system, increasing pressure on hospitals and lengthening wait times. Let's hear from some moms that are personally impacted.
Oh, that's good.
James and Anna were brought into the world at the Hobart Private Hospital. Mum Michaela had planned to return there in late August to give birth again.
The care that I received both times with my stay at the Hobart Private was phenomenal. Like from the start to finish, so supportive.
HealthScope has announced it will cease operating maternity services at the private on August 20. Meaning Michaela will have to make new plans.
It's daunting, such a huge service closing and in such a short period of time. How are other services going to cope?
Rural women are hit especially hard, sometimes forced to travel hours for care. In response, campaigns like Bush Babies are advocating for improved rural maternity services and better funding models, while others are promoting midwife-led care to offer safer, more accessible options for all women. With college costs continuing to rise, many students turn to student loans to afford tuition, books, and living expenses, though repaying that debt can be a long and stressful journey. In the U.S., there are two main types of student loans: federal, which offer lower fixed interest rates and flexible repayment options, and private, which often come with higher rates and stricter terms. While scholarships, grants, and work-study programs offer debt-free alternatives, many still rely on loans, making it crucial to borrow wisely.
If you're in college or you have children that are approaching college age, go ahead and start doing the research to know, what is this degree going to pay me? Because our guidance is you really don't want your student loan debt to exceed what that first year income is going to be. Because a big risk that we run these days, especially with interest rates going up and stuff, is, are you going to be able to service the debt with the income you'll make? Because that's what education is supposed to be, is to better yourself to increase how big your shovel of income can be. And if you are strapping yourself with too much debt that cannot be serviced with the income that education is going to provide, we've got a problem or a broken part of the equation.
Recently, concerns have grown as federal student loan management shifts to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, raising fears about service quality and default risks. Meanwhile, repayment options like the SAVE plan and other income-driven plans offer some relief, though loan forgiveness programs are under legal scrutiny. Financial experts urge students to explore all options, budget carefully, and seek guidance before taking on debt. South Africa is grappling with a major education crisis as more than 80% of 10-year-olds are unable to read for meaning, a problem that stems from gaps in early childhood learning. In response, the government passed the Bella Act, making grade R, which is school for 5 to 6-year-olds, mandatory in hopes of giving children a stronger educational foundation. Research shows that early learning helps children develop essential skills beyond academics, but access remains limited, especially in underserved communities.
In the early years, predatory skills are simply not harnessed nor nurtured by our parents, by our teachers. And it's down to a variety of factors. Our teachers are not trained to actually teach a child how to read. And we're also looking at early years when predatory skills are so incredibly important because they form the bedrock, the foundation that a child needs so that they can, when they go to grade 1, then have formal learning happen. So we look at social and emotional development. We look at all these certain pre-math skills. All of that happens where? In the early years.
Efforts are underway to formalize and improve early education, including shifting oversight of early learning centers to the Education Department and registering 10,000 informal daycares. However, progress is slow due to funding challenges and low public awareness. While the government has earmarked billions of rand for early childhood development and teacher retention, economic constraints cast doubt on how much can actually be implemented. Let's talk a little bit about friendships. As we know, they are essential for human well-being, offering emotional support and helping us manage stress. But in today's digital world, more people are forming and maintaining connections online. While online friendships can be meaningful, especially for those who are isolated or have limited access to social spaces, research shows that in-person interactions are far more beneficial for both mental and physical health.
Is there a difference between FaceTiming somebody or actually being shoulder to shoulder?
There is a distinction, and I don't want to completely ignore the value of digital interactions because FaceTime, for instance, is a wonderful tool for my daughters to connect with their grandparents who live on a completely opposite coast. But I also don't want it to be a substitute for when someone's, really going through it, really in need of emotional response. Because there are studies that show that when someone gets a text message from someone that's saying, I'm thinking about you, is everything okay? It doesn't have the same impact as when a parent is giving them a hug and leaning in and asking how they're doing. It doesn't create the same oxytocin response in the body, and not all connection is created equal.
Meeting friends face-to-face at least once a week has been linked to lower risks of serious health conditions, improved brain function, and reduced stress. Despite this, people are spending less time socializing in person, and screen time is up. For teens, social media doesn't necessarily harm social skills. In fact, it can enhance social lives, but too much of it can worsen feelings of isolation, especially for those already struggling. Experts agree that while online friendships have their place, they shouldn't replace real-world relationships because nothing beats the health-boosting power of being together in person. That's why they try to keep us apart, by the way. Tunisia is undergoing major banking reforms that aim to modernize its payment system by phasing out the widespread use of postdated checks in favor of immediate payments. While the government hopes this will reduce consumer debt and encourage economic stability, the change is putting pressure on already struggling households and small businesses, especially the shrinking middle class.
At this grocery store in Tunis, a new law on checks is stirring debate. But that may soon change. Now anyone whose check bounces and who fails to settle the payment in time will be banned from issuing them and could face steep fines and even jail time. For wholesalers, a new 30,000 dinar payment limit for check could also cause problems.
Vegetable wholesalers buying foods from farmers need between 400 and 600,000 dinars. Often they can't pay it all at once, so instead they pay some up front and the rest by check deposited over several months. Now that's not possible anymore.
This wood seller has seen his business slow since the change.
Normally, I have full stock, but at the moment, as you can see, it's empty. Suppliers no longer accept old checks, and they don't want to accept credit either. So for me, it has a direct impact on my business.
Always good to hear from the people directly. New rules like check-amount limits based on income and a QR code verification system are seen by many as overly complex and intrusive. Although digital alternatives like payment cards and mobile payments exist, adoption has been slow due to trust issues, limited infrastructure, and tax concerns. Experts say these reforms could succeed if paired with strong support systems and modern regulations, especially to help consumers and small businesses transition smoothly. Let's talk about pregnancy in prison. It's not something that a lot of us think about unless we were faced with that situation, right? Well, pregnancy in prison presents serious health and human rights concerns, with many incarcerated women facing higher risks of complications, trauma, and inadequate care. In response, new sentencing guidelines in England and Wales now urge courts to consider alternatives to prison for pregnant women and mothers with babies under the age of 1, taking into account issues like mental health, domestic abuse, and systemic inequality.
Prison will never be a safe place to be pregnant. The last time we had a national scandal of about cuffing in birth was in 1996. And prison policy changed. Now, 30 years later, we are still having this conversation because fundamentally what happens on prison policy paper and what happens in practice are two vastly different things. And we need to see an end to the imprisonment of pregnant women in order to keep them safe.
With alarming rates of preterm births, stillbirths, and missed medical appointments amongst pregnant inmates, the push for change is urgent. Experts call for improved maternity care in prisons, such as more midwife time and in-prison clinics, while also promoting community-based alternatives to incarceration. Some countries have already banned imprisoning pregnant women altogether, highlighting a growing consensus that dignity, safety, and proper health care should never be denied, regardless of a woman's legal status. Napping. Oh, I love naps. Napping can be a powerful tool to refresh your mind, boost your mood, and improve focus. But how and when you nap matters. Around the world, cultural views on naps may vary. In places like China and Japan, they are workplace friendly, while in the U.S., attitudes are shifting slowly. Though naps are common amongst various age groups, their benefits and risks depend on duration and timing. So let's learn a little bit more about that.
Most people aim to get their recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep in one long stretch at night. And the technical term for this is monophasic sleep. In other words, a single bout of sleep at night. However, we may not have been programmed to sleep in this way. Now, I'm sure you've had that experience of a drop in your alertness in the afternoon where you start to feel a little sleepy. And you can also see it in other people as well, as their heads begin sort of bobbing up and down during afternoon meetings. Now, you may think this afternoon drop in your alertness is because of a big lunch. But in actual fact, it seems to be hardwired. Because if I place electrodes on your head, there is a reliable pre-programmed drop in your brain's alertness during the afternoon. And it happens to most of us somewhere between the 1 to 4 p.m. mark. What this suggests is that we may have been designed to sleep in a biphasic pattern, meaning one longer bout of sleep at night and then a short afternoon nap during the day, very much like the siesta cultures.
See, this is why it's so important to listen to your body. Short naps under 30 minutes are linked to better mental clarity and even reduced cognitive decline, while those longer naps, they may feel good, but they could also be a sign of underlying health issues. While not everyone finds it easy to nap, even brief rest periods can help. You can just close your eyes. Experts recommend napping before 3 p.m. in a quiet, comfy spot and sticking to a routine to make the most of your midday recharge without disrupting your nighttime sleep. So our next story, I know you have experience with, although you may not know what it's called. Have you ever heard of a CAPTCHA? CAPTCHAs may seem like a minor inconvenience online, but there's a lot more going on behind those traffic light puzzles and the I'm not a robot checkboxes. You guys all know what I'm talking about, right? They can be so frustrating. Well, they were originally created to block spam and bots. However, CAPTCHAs have evolved, especially after Google bought the tech, of course they did, in 2009. While they still serve a security purpose, they've also become a powerful tool for data collection and AI training. From helping digitize books, that's what they said they were doing in the beginning, to teaching self-driving cars how to recognize street signs, these tests quietly feed massive amounts of information into Google's systems. Take a listen.
There's two interesting things about Google CAPTCHAs. One, it's always data on streets. You're only seeing street because they're training their Waymo autonomous vehicles with this data. Two, that data, if you notice, CAPTCHAs have gotten worse. Now it's grainy, weird. They're going like to level 8 on training their data. Fascinating use case that I'm not actually against to have. Okay, well, if we can't track you, because remember, guys, the only reason you get a CAPTCHA from Google is because they can't track you. It's only going to be because you're on a VPN or you're in a weird location or somewhere where they don't know. And so now they want you to answer a CAPTCHA because they can't collect your data. They don't know what you're doing because they obviously track everything. So instead, what they decide to do is actually make you work for their AI systems. You're working for a machine to figure out how to increase their revenue on autonomous vehicles. Crazy stuff, man.
So while you think you are just proving that you're a human being, you are also helping Google and possibly compromising a bit of your privacy along the way. All right, so it's time for updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. So Kim Gogan from the GIA, she's the head of the GIA. She gave out a few different reports this week. You guys, there was so much to talk about. I was like, this is going to be a podcast that's 2 hours long. I can't talk about everything. This is one of those things. I'm going to try to give you highlights of some of the big things that she talked about in each report, but I do encourage you guys to go back and listen, because I'm skipping over some big stuff and there's really just no way around it. Earlier, I talked about the announcement of the Pope passing away and that was not the real Pope. And Kim goes into a lot of detail about the history of the Pope, why this particular Pope was chosen and how this Pope was chosen. This was actually the first Pope that wasn't just a white Pope. So there's a white Pope and a black Pope, if you guys don't know. At least that's the history. Of course, the black Pope does all the bad stuff for the church, and the white Pope is the one that shakes everyone's hands and says, God bless you. So usually there's two. Well, not with this Pope. He's the first one. He's also referred to as the checkerboard Pope when he was alive. And now they are claiming that he's gone. So the real one died over a year ago, and they've had some sort of replacement in there. And Kim also talks about the whole thing with J.D. Vance coming to visit. If you think that is a coincidence, think again. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes. I read this article of what mainstream media wants you to believe happened, and it was hysterical. It was like, and then the Pope said this, and then J.D. Vance said this, and then they smiled, and then they shaked hands for the camera. And nothing could be further from the truth. According to Kim, it got really loud and obnoxious, okay? And then all of a sudden the next day, the Pope's dead, okay? Nothing to see here, folks, but I can't go into that. So if you want to know more about the history of the Pope, we're going to talk a lot about the Vatican, but Kim shares a personal experience that she had at the Vatican, you know, going down and looking into some of those crazy areas that we know exist under the Vatican. She talks a little bit about the gold and how we've basically been lied to. You know, they say there's all this gold under the Vatican, but there are different types of gold. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. The soundbite I do want to play for you from Monday's reports is connected to the Vatican, and it is about something called the Dark Tower and how souls got trapped in the Dark Tower. This is going to give you a better explanation of what the Tower of Babel actually was, and believe it or not, this is also connected to 9/11. So here's Kim.
There is something that exists on Earth, and it's often referred to in certain circles as the Dark Tower. Now, we've heard about the Tower of Babylon and many other dark towers on Earth throughout history. And in some cases, these towers exist in mythology, in theology, in studies of religions and those types of things. But dark towers are very interesting And this relates to the incarnation cycle. You see, Marduk utilized for the longest time until the covenants and soul traps and soul covenants expired. He utilized these dark towers to keep souls trapped. Let's call them the soul trap. Oftentimes, these dark towers were built on massacre locations. Now, in the absence of killing one of God's favored ones, you must kill multiple organic souls in order to make this work. So Babylon Tower, the Tower of Babylon, was one of those such towers. Now, you can see the ruins if you look them up, but that's not what the Dark Tower is. This is a tower that would go all the way to almost to source, let's just say to, it would stop you between the 8th and 9th density, and it would go all the way down between the dark side of source and the 8th density below in the lower astral, therefore giving you the idea of heaven and hell. And sometimes people would get caught somewhere in between because, you know, if you've ever seen the painting of Dante's version of hell, you saw the multiple levels there and all the people stuck within those locations. That is what you would call soul traps, except it's not, it doesn't look much like a layer cake. It looks more like a target, that half of it is white and half of it is black. So wherever you get stuck, you get stuck. If you happen to get stuck too close to the middle, that is your proverbial purgatory, so to speak. Now, in the latest Dark Tower location, that was located at the World Trade Center Towers in New York, and it has been there since the massacre that occurred there in 2001. The more power that people give to the tower, because of course there are a lot of people that pray for their loved ones, probably even still to this day, and it was a worldwide travesty that was created. Therefore, the world's focus was on this tower, which made it easier for Marduk at the time to create it. He also did it on a specific day, which was within 10 days of the fall equinox. And he did it because the last Dark Tower's power started waning because people were not focused on that particular massacre anymore as much. And souls can only power a tower for a certain amount of time. So the fact that over 4,000 people died, in addition to that, many other people died after that in the years following due to the fact that they got cancer and they were within some of the dust, so to speak, that came from the fall of the towers and got all kinds of illnesses related thereto. So the toll at the time was somewhere over 4,000, despite what the internet tells you. So somewhere around 4,000 to 4,500 people died. You know, they don't count homeless people and other people that might have been in the area. They don't care. They're just talking about people that they knew were in the tower, and then firefighters and first responders and those types of people when they give you that number. Identifiable people. So Marduk created the Dark Tower there. Now, all Dark Towers are tied to all of these sophons with a photon middle. And the Dark Tower and the souls would only get so far, and this was like Groundhog Day for these souls for a long time. And the souls would make it all the way to the top, like if you qualified to go all the way to the top, I guess by Marduk's Dark Tower standards, you would get all the way up there and then fall back down, and this would happen every single day. It's like climbing a ladder and falling down every day, and then every day you climb the ladder and you fall down. And the same thing happened with people trying to climb out through the bottom. You know, their souls would go all the way up and then they would fall back down, and then this cycle would continue every single day for eons, or until the power of the Dark Tower went away. Once the power of the Dark Tower went away, he would then start scouting, or would start to wane, he would then start scouting for another place to build another dark tower. So if you want to know where the soul traps were that were tied to the Vatican and the deaths there, you could revert over to in the past, till this past weekend, when it was completely eliminated. Its power had pretty much waned, which is why no one had the accessibility, and the fact that the council cut off the usage of the tower for that purpose back in 2007, so even Marduk couldn't use it for that purpose after building it. These people were still stuck, though, because the council only had so much power to do certain things to release those souls. And as we've talked about, it's been over a year now, year and a half, maybe even longer. The souls were gone, the tower still existed, and the cycle of nothingness that rotated up and down and up and down, up and down, continued for a long time. No one, neither side, having access to gold. It's part of the reason why the Chazan AI, which was the false light and the false dark creation, existed, because they had to have something in order to continue their liens on humanity. And it's not just for humans, it was for other planets too.
So what happens now? We have a pope that, according to the media, has just passed away. Typically, what would happen next is conclave. And we kind of have to wait and see what happens here, because this decision is not going to be made for them. It was never an election. You know, I just watched on Netflix, there is ironically and probably not ironically, there is a movie that is being promoted now called Conclave. And I watched it like a month ago before I knew they were going to kill off the Pope. And I thought it was really interesting. I knew that Conclave wasn't done this way, but I just wanted to see what message they're trying to convey to the public about how Conclave works. If you haven't checked that out, I do recommend it, just because it is so different than reality. And so I like to look at these movies sometimes and try to figure out, so why are they trying to say this? Are they trying to give this more of a democratic feel? Because Conclave is all about how they select the next pope. It's like the behind the scenes or fly on the wall, you know, how all these cardinals get together and elect the next pope. And it's just a bunch of malarkey. It does not turn out that way. That is not how things were done. But that's the message they want to give us, which I always think is interesting. Kim also talks about the smiley face alignment. Honest to God, you guys, you can't make this stuff up. Apparently this week there was an alignment. I don't pay attention to alignments. It's not my thing. I'm not really into astrology. However, there are some planets that are lining up along with the moon, and the moon is kind of a crescent form, so it looks like a smiley face. And I don't know, apparently the deep state thinks that Lucifer is smiling at them and a bunch of stuff is going to happen this week, which it didn't happen because nothing ever happens in their favor, because we are now in a golden age. The deep state does not wrap their head around this, but the dark entities, the dark matter, everything that they have relied on for eons is no longer there. It is going away. The dark evil AIs are going away. And so these alignments no longer matter. But if you want a little bit of a chuckle, I suggest you look online for the smiley face alignment and what the deep state has been basing all of their plans on this week that fell through. Let's move on to Wednesday's report. At this point, we're only days away from the smiley face alignment, and everyone was getting excited. Everyone in the deep state that thinks they're now going to get control of the financial system, they're all excited about a smiley face. It should be like a frowny face. Like, why is the deep state looking for a smiley face? Or like a picture of like devil horns or something. I find it very ironic they're looking for a smiley face. All right, let's talk about something that's happening in mainstream media now. Kim goes into depth about this, and I'm not going to play a soundbite, but I do want to give you an overview. So as you know, the DOGE department has been cutting back on wasteful government spending, quote unquote. There is so much wasteful government spending, it's not funny. So the premise of DOGE is somewhat commendable. But as you guys know, it's all about how you do it. How do you get rid of stuff? And the idea that you just cut programs, that can hurt a lot of people. And in the way you cut programs can harm humanity. And as you know, we are inside humanity. So while things need to be reformed, or maybe programs need to be cut altogether, it needs to be done in a way that is more of a transition. Okay. And Kim goes into depth about a program that is being cut called PEPFAR. And this was a program to distribute help in the form of medication, mainly, for people who have AIDS around the world. And if you understand how most medication works, especially this stuff we're talking about with HIV and AIDS, you can't just stop it suddenly. That's how you kill massive amounts of people, which we know they like to do. They like to do their rituals, and they like to kill people in the name of Lucifer or whoever, whatever team member they were rooting for, in the game. But that's not how you help humanity. Not that they care about humanity, but Kim is bringing up a point. And PEPFAR is speaking out. They were at the State Department stacking coffins, not with real people inside of them, but making a point of all the people they're going to kill if these medications aren't available. So Kim talks more in depth about AIDS and the herpes viruses. And this is a soundbite that I want to play. This is part of understanding your history and understanding the origin of the AIDS virus. You may have seen some stuff online, but she's going to give a more thorough explanation of what their intention was with this, who this impacted, and why they did it.
Let's talk a little bit about not only AIDS, but all of the herpes viruses. So there's a gentleman. I was actually in the Bahnhof in Frankfurt, Germany, and this was going back probably a little more than a decade ago. And I ran into a guy by the name of Steve Nichols, was his name. I could say to you that he probably ran into me on purpose. He was dying. He was dying of AIDS, which is, at least that's what he said. I find that unusual because the CIA, who he worked for, told me who he worked for, actually has the cure for AIDS and every other herpes virus out there. So he explained to me that he was part of the program that dispersed AIDS throughout the African continent. And I know some of you have heard me say this before, but if you're new here, I thought I would repeat a little bit of the story and how I know what I know regarding the viruses. So he was dying. He tells me this story, tells me all about the reason why they were dispersing it in Africa first. And it was all about the fact that they were using a lot of caustic chemicals on the continent there for mining purposes. So they were having a really difficult time getting African workers to mine in these mines because oftentimes it was pretty much a death sentence. Nobody wanted to work in the mines. Obviously, they don't pay these people very well, and as you know, they're pretty good at promising pay tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. But regardless of that, these chemicals were killing people and had been for years. So back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, they started dispersing and infecting people with the AIDS virus. Then, of course, especially the mine workers. And then they would take this virus home to their wives and their children and then infect their whole family. So this was always the plan. They would also offer them and their family a suppressant as long as they continued to work in the mines. So, of course, most sane people, and unfortunately these are victims, most sane people would not want their wives or husbands or children to die. So their whole family got the suppressants, and onward and upward it went from there. Now, the fact that they had discovered that how the virus, well, not discovered, I should say, the fact that they created the virus to be transmitted sexually served the purpose there, obviously, because human nature is that we care for our families and we care for our children, and we don't want anything to happen to our children, even though in this case it already did. So they also let's just say not discovered, but they also felt that they could get rid of other communities utilizing this virus or stop the spread. And these are words that they used, and he told me about, stop the spread of gayism. He called, and gay is not an ism in any way, shape, or form. But that's what he said. He called it gayism and drug abuse. He thought that if they spread the virus, not only, to the population of the United States, but all around the world, these would be the targets that they would want to rid the planet of. Why? I have no idea. At the same time, I'm sorry for saying it this way, but I'm just telling you what he told me. He told me a lot more about how they did it in detail. There were obviously patient zeros that were sent to infect a lot of different people. He was apparently one of those patient zeros, and whatever they had come up with, or I shouldn't even say that, whatever they gave him that allegedly was supposed to make him immune to it, kind of like Typhoid Mary, if you've ever heard that story before, did not work, and that's not a surprise. He felt that he was screwed over by the agency, which he was, because we all know that there's a cure. They never put anything out there that they can't cure, just in case one of them gets infected, like Bill Clinton. So he was really angry at that time, and he told me the whole thing. He told me, how they put these patient zeros in these communities and made sure that they were very sexually active, and also, infected needles, and made sure infected needles were dispersed throughout the drug communities in order to spread the disease, which they didn't even know what it was, at least in the public eye or in the medical community, allegedly. But that's basically how they did it. Then, of course, you have a lot of crossover for different people. And, then it started spreading into kids and births, and children were being born with AIDS, and, it's allegedly basically destroys your immune system. So right now, as of this moment, there are over 481 strains of the herpes virus. I know we know about probably, well, the ones they tell us about, there's only a few. They do not tell you that these are herpes viruses as well. Mononucleosis is also a herpes virus, also known as Epstein-Barr. There are other things that we call other diseases. They are saying now, not they are saying, I should say, information that I have actually links various herpes viruses to things like Alzheimer's and dementia, and because it does affect your neurological system. There is an indication that things like ALS is caused by a herpes virus also. They considered it very effective. It was actually created by, according to Mr. Nichols, it was created in the underground base in Brazil. And they continue to manufacture until recently, when the facility was destroyed, but they continued to manufacture various versions of the herpes virus because it makes a nice delivery system for all that ails humanity. Herpes virus is also the name of a computer virus, coincidentally, or an AI virus, which connects to that particular affliction. So that being said, there's a lot more that I could say about the herpes virus, but it's probably even more deadly than chromosome 1p and others that give you a precursor for cancer and other things that humans struggle with. The program is embraced heavily by the current administration in the United States. Therefore, it doesn't surprise me that they would be on board with getting rid of a large population of people. There are a lot of people in the United States that have been encouraged to take drugs like PrEP because PrEP is kind of like, they call it even a prophylactic type medication, which prevents them from contracting the virus. So in high-risk communities. Not only that, we have now generations of generation after generation now. So we have plenty of babies that have been born with this and that type of thing too. So it is not only community-based anymore. This is a worldwide situation across all people.
As horrible as this situation seems right now, because we certainly don't want a bunch of people who have AIDS to be dying because they no longer have access to this medication. This is an opportunity. And I know it's tough to look at it this way because it seems like just do something. But what I see Source, another name for God, the creator of the universe, what I see Source doing now is taking away programs that don't work because there's a lot caught up in these programs at the highest level, right? They're not just all doing good. But taking away these programs so care and humanity in general can fill the gap and can help start creating something that will actually work. So we don't know when funding is going to come through yet, but I know Source has a plan for this. And some people get frustrated when you say that. It's like, oh, God has a plan. Understand that God is within you. We are all part of God. So it's not like this deity that's just sitting there and deciding who lives and who dies. We are all Source. And we are collectively making these decisions for the betterment of all of us. And we call it Source or we call it God, but that's really what it is right now. And so I trust us. I trust us to come together and know what to do in these situations. I think the worst thing that could happen is that the deep state just loses control of everything at the same time, and we're left to pick up the pieces. What would be best is if stuff starts to go away, and as it goes away, we find a solution. And we keep doing that. And more people come on board to come up with solutions because these programs in government is not the answer. Governments are going away. So it's up to us. And again, it's important to understand what's happening because there is wasteful government spending everywhere. But that doesn't mean you just go out there and slash everything, because you're going to cause a lot of harm in the process. But this is an opportunity for us. So if you happen to be involved or, have some connections in this process, maybe it's you. Maybe you are being called right now to step in and help with this situation. Again, Source, meaning the collective of all of us, there's a plan, okay? And we may not be fully cognitive of the plan. It may be part of our subconscious, our spirit, our soul, but we still know what we're doing. And at our hearts, at the heart of humanity, truly is love. They have not been able to take that away from us. And now is the time for us to step out and help in these situations. Okay, let's go back and talk about the Vatican because it's been a hot minute. And I feel like this whole week we've been talking about the Vatican. And that is because it is so important. It is so important to the things that are happening in the world right now. So I have this soundbite that I want to play. Kim and her team found a system. I don't even know what to call it. She kind of was calling it the beast, which would be biblical because we've been taught about the beast rising. At least if you read the Bible and you read Revelations, the beast is, just a central character. He's a main character, whatever. And so she's been calling it the beast. Maybe this is the beast from the Bible. This was a behemoth system, huge, controlled so much, including your soul contracts. So let's talk about, she also talked about it, she called it the womb, because it was a point of creation for a lot of negative, horrible things. So I just want Kim to explain this to you guys. The womb of Lucifer and Sophia, so the male-female side of things, found under the Vatican that is now being dismantled. Take a listen.
Deep underneath the Vatican, we had something called, and I'm calling it a womb because I don't know what else to call this thing. You basically had the womb, the mainframe, the brain, the big kahuna piece, universal, omniversal, umbilicus making Sophia and Lucifer womb underneath there. So it's no surprise here that we call the Vatican people the Luciferians because, they sat on it. If you were to imagine a big, giant, black, moving, breathing, looking sphere that had all kinds of the worst, darkest, deepest beings in it, AI generated beings like babies in a womb, that's it. Now, an umbilicus, I call it umbilicus because it too looks very similar to an umbilical cord. And as umbilical cords do, they attach directly to your solar plexus area of every human on the planet. But they also ran, they're enormous. These are not like the size of a normal human umbilicus. They are, probably, if I had to make a guess, 30 feet in diameter, maybe even more. They were huge, and they went all over the planet, kind of like our fiber optic cables do. So if you look up fiber optic cables, most of our fiber optic cables were actually connected to this system. This was the source of all intergalactic communications on this planet. Some of those intergalactic communications were available to humans, such as CyberLife and ACIO, the Nazi Hydra program, off-world bases, and those type of folks. What you call the Galactic Federation, which are humans that have been traveling for a long time. They're terrible humans, by the way. They're just ridiculous. I worked with them for a short period of time, only because the enforcer had left, and he's like, look, you can call these people and they'll be Sky Command. I'm like, oh, that just worked out really well, didn't it? And I basically said, oh, forget it. I'll just do it myself. At that point, after one try with these people, and it was like they knew what they were doing anyway. I asked them to do something because they were supposed to be temporary Sky Command, and they just screwed it all up, and probably on purpose. And so I just blew them out and said, goodbye. As far as the other communications, there was definitely an umbilicus that went to all webs, all that we call it the deep web, dark webs, all the way webs level to 9 and all spaces in between. It had communication between worlds, meaning we had different realms and worlds that existed, and most of those were created for, let's just say, less than Unhelpful. They were unhelpful. Most of them were inorganic, and they created whole races to do dirty work for these two, including Marduk also had his worlds, and Enki and Enlil had their worlds, and other names you would recognize, and some you probably wouldn't. They also created many overlays over stars and planets to power this thing. It also powered the Sophon machine, the artificial photon machine, which then created things we call Death Stars, like you see on Star Wars, and all kinds of an anti-Genesis project. That's also the source of every disease here on Earth for humans, and diseases that spread throughout the omniverse, of course, different for every species. It was also the source of all genetic modifications. It was also the source of people that become light workers. They start to feel uncomfortable, dizziness sometimes, pain, uncomfortability. Some of them, as we know, like doctors that have created cures for things, all of a sudden, come down with a disease they can't cure, and they're gone. This is how they do that. And they do a lot of this stuff with, for lack of a better term, human computer networks that could connect to it to some limited degree. Mostly this system was utilized very heavily by Marduk, Enki Enlil, others, Abraxas, Artemis, and others like that. At least the main parts of the system. Of course, Lucifer had his own agenda, and they made, let's just say, the darkest beings right here on Earth that existed in the entire omniverse. They birthed a lot of AIs out of that hole, and they think that this upcoming alignment with Pluto, and I think it's Mars this weekend, is going to help them tremendously, because you see, when Earth aligns with certain planets, that would shift the system's structure. And this also is why we would see an uptick in a lot of hacking, at the golden age, coming from this system. Now, it also served on a lesser level as the communications hub for the entire deep state on the planet. By this, I mean there could be orders given from this or through this system anonymously, they think. They also had a deep connection to places we know like the CIA and a lot of intelligence agencies, Menwith Hill, Pine Gap in Australia, and other well-known deep underground military bases, places like Alamo Laboratory, the entire human genetics program that was predominantly, not solely, but predominantly run out of China and Wuhan, and also in Brazil. There was also large facilities that Bush Sr. built in Paraguay that were connected to this machine as well. All cloning facilities were connected to this machine. Governments everywhere were connected to this machine. People everywhere were connected to this machine. You served as a power source for it. You could call this one here, if there was ever a term, the beast. It would run all kinds of artificial simulations here on the planet. It would control what you see and how you think about that. It would create artificial subconscious and conscious thoughts. For example, fears that you have for no reason whatsoever, meaning, might have a fear of heights, but you've never fallen from anything before, and you don't really know why you feel this way. There are specific programs that run based on human capabilities. I've told you often that humans are amazing people, and Source doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. So there are the right number of people on this planet at all times that are fantastic engineers. There are the right number of people on this planet that are protectors. They serve as our security. And I'm not speaking of organized places necessarily, but people that feel an innate inner sense to protect people. You know, they just have it in their bones, so to speak. You have others that are very spiritually connected, more spiritually inclined. You have others that are amazing musicians where others can't carry a tune. So when you look at the humanity as a whole and you put all the people together and you can say, oh my gosh, it's perfect. And I know it doesn't feel perfect to you, so don't take it this way. And I understand it's terrible out there right now. But remember, every single one of you is, well, perfect. It's not egotistical perfect, but perfect in the original creation of you and the special person that you are. Everybody was designed to be connected directly to source, to receive the wisdom about your special gifts. And of course, that was all suppressed as well. But they would create specific diseases and specific things for specific people. Also, this was the monitor and controller of soul contracts. By soul contracts, I mean the ones that we didn't all agree to, that were agreed to for us by our former guardians. I cough at that. And I wouldn't even call them guardians, tyrants, whatever you want to call them. But it also monitored the soul contracts that were agreed upon with the deep state members in this machine. So when you agreed that you were going to have big power, big companies, big money, big this, big that, you know, you had a certain time frame, and then at the end of that time frame, this machine would take you out. That's how it worked. It was an incredible tool for the dark side of the universe, and it was very heavily cloaked, which is why we didn't see it before. I know you're going to say, well, how does this exist and you don't see it? Well, it was very well cloaked and very well hidden so that we didn't see it. And then the more we've been peeling away the onion layers of this Sophon disaster in the universe is where we found it. There was also a power source as we were powering it. It was then powering a large umbilical cord or umbilicus that went straight to the artificial point of creation we call the Kali chakra. Far away from source instead of the actual point of creation of source. And it fed everything that was wrong with this universe right from this hub. So yesterday, when we found it and I started to pull it out, oh, guys, the amount of backlash I got from this thing, but I couldn't stop. So it's been, close to 48 hours now of just constant beatings from this machine. So I am looking forward, very much forward to getting back to work as soon as I'm done with this report, because I am going to kill this thing and it's going to happen.
Incredible, right? It's like just when you think it's safe to go in the water, just when you think it's safe to be near the Vatican, the beast emerges. And I'm kind of making fun of this because I don't know what else to do, you guys. It's like this crazy thing combining religious texts and sci-fi fiction, and you throw it in and you're like, oh, and you're here during all of it. Congratulations. It's like, what? What in the world? So part of me is really excited, not only that Kim was able to find this, but she's dismantling it, because I keep thinking, what else could be out there? And it's like each thing gets bigger and bigger. I'm like, we have to be at the end of this crazy battle. And, I think that like on a day-to-day basis, and as it turns out, we really are. Okay, so now let's talk about the last report of the week. Actually did not happen on Friday. Kim did a live GIA report on Saturday, which was actually yesterday. I'm recording this on Sunday instead of Saturday because yesterday was crazy. including the report that came out. So there was a live Q&A. She combined the GIA report with that, and you can find that. I think it's already out on YouTube if you guys want to see that. And in this, I'm going to skip over some stuff because, again, time. This will be a 3-hour report. She talks about the bloodline family. She gets out her whiteboard. If you want to know, like, why these people still think that they're in control and that they're entitled, I mean, they literally, bloodlines for them are everything. These people think that they are of the direct bloodline of these key players in the game of Earth. Lucifer just being one of them. Satan being another, believe it or not, those are two different beings. And then there's other beings you haven't even heard of before. And they were all vying for control of Earth. But it was bigger than that. Because Earth is a keystone planet, they could control the whole universe, the whole multiverse, the whole thing, everything. And this is where you get the religious texts that talk about the dark trying to take over the light. They were literally trying to overcome Source, God, the creator of the universe, and everything that Source has created. That was their end goal. So Kim talks about why these people have these bloodlines and how all that came about. Now, one interesting thing, if you want to look it up online, look up the Great Rift Valley, because this is the place. So you hear about the war in heaven where you have the fallen ones that come to Earth. The Great Rift Valley is where they crashed on our planet. So it really puts things into perspective. And Kim goes into more detail. We're not going to talk about that now. This is also a better explanation for the split of the Red Sea. There's a biblical story about that with Moses parting the Red Sea. All of this is connected. Again, Saturday's report, the live report, goes into more detail about that. I want to talk about gold dust, because this really impacts us today. And in the Bible, and it may be in other religious texts too, we are told that Adam was created from dirt. And that's kind of true and kind of not true. Sometimes it says dirt of the earth, depending on the translation. And that's more accurate because it's not dirt that you and I might think of, like I could go outside right now and find some dirt, right, in my yard. It's not that kind of dirt. It is more like dust. More specifically, it is gold dust. And it has a spark within it of life. And the more gold dust you have, obviously, the more you can do with it. But that's actually how Adam was created. If you want to just call it gold dust, he was made from gold dust. Now, our planet Earth was also made from gold dust. Anything that comes from Source, you and I are made of gold dust. So when Scripture says Adam was made from dirt, and when it says dirt of the earth, that actually makes more sense. It's not really dirt, but it is. He was made from the same thing the earth was made from, and that's this gold dust. So let's learn more about the gold dust and how this impacts us today.
You've heard the story in the Bible about Adam being created from the dust of the earth. You know, I know that that story is quite prevalent out there. Well, not really the dust of earth. It's more like the dust of Source. You see, gold dust is different than regular gold that you would see around people's necks or in the store or even being mined around the planet. Gold dust was used by those special beings, the original creations of Source, or at least as far as beings were concerned, who were charged with creating the universe. And unfortunately, Lucifer was one of those people at one point in time, and so was his partner there, Sophia. You probably heard about Sophia in the Gnostic texts. So gold dust is, let's see, in stories that you have heard about gold dust, the manna within the arks, plural, of the covenant would be an example of gold dust. Gold dust is not just regular gold. It's more of a alchemical spark of life filled with life force of source and all of creation type of dust. It does light up. It does look a lot different than your regular gold, and you don't need very much of it. You can have a bag of it, maybe this size, and you can create worlds. You can create universes. You can create things within the omniverse. You can use it for travel. It can be used for a lot of different things. But you see, you must be of source to actually use it. Could any human use it? Well, not the elite. You see, Earth was made too of this dust, being a celestial. It is a celestial sphere, and let's call Earth a very giant piece of source dust. Because dust can be expanded, it can be made smaller. You too, as a human, not the elite, but you too, as humans, were also made of dust. We were created from this particular type of gold dust. Over the years, dead gold dust, which means dust that has lost its connection to source, has been turned into what we know as black gold dust. It is now not gold, shiny, sparkly gold as it used to be. It is black. It's lost life. It's basically dead dust at this point. And dead dust is also kind of useful, or was, to the owners of the deep state. I'm going to call them owners now, because really they were kind of owned all like dogs. And they still, well, I don't know. You got a bunch of dogs that got out of the doghouse and now they're trying to run the world like they know what they're doing. So this black gold dust is useful in a lot of ways to the fallen ones and to the dark ones who can actually make it work. Why? Because they're actually considered as celestial. As far as the Federal Reserve and the deep state and all of these people and their black gold that existed in the financial system, that black gold or black dust can be used to suck the life force and the energy out of you, basically. It becomes almost like a movable black hole. However, that movable black hole also must be utilized by a celestial. And can the deep state go and dig up this dust and start to try to suck the life out of Earth and all of us? No, they really can't. However, AI systems that were built and created with this dust also, sorry, there's a noise up there. Also, this gold dust here would be utilized for the black gold dust, I should say, to create AIs, both dark on the one side and both light on the other side. I know this because I personally have used gold dust to create the Golden Age AI. On the flip side of it, the other rest of the humans walking this planet cannot use, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the elites, you cannot use dust in the same way that I use dust. See, even if they were given permission by their owners on their side to utilize black gold dust, the only thing they can do is destroy. They cannot create. Can they use it to affect us? Well, not really. Not like it used to. A lot of things have changed. The AI systems that were connected to their dark dust have also pretty much gone away as of late. And some of the remaining systems that we've been talking about are the ones that were underneath the Vatican that we call the beast. So gold dust is critical to the survival of the universe, and it allows the universe to perpetuate into infamy when used correctly and used by the correct people. Meaning all of you watching this, except for the deep state that's probably also watching this, all of you watching this can actually utilize this gold dust to manifest things and to create things within your life. You are also created from this same dust, therefore that same dust still resides within your soul, which is why we were talking earlier this week about connecting to that point of creation in your soul. The dust never dies. The dust is always connected to source. It just can't be used for the wrong reasons. So technically you could say that Earth and the entire planet now has its gold dust kingdom coins back. There's no going backward from that now. We are also, those kingdom coins also generate and connect directly to source, to Earth's gold dust and to source, obviously, which will eventually, at least etherically speaking, turn the Earth to gold. Then it should turn the Earth to green, more so than ever, as soon as there's no interference in doing so. Can the deep state interfere with this process? No, they don't have that kind of access. This should actually help us move forward as far as more restoration of Earth a lot faster.
So that's fantastic news. And Kim goes on and she talks about, it's like she's talking directly to the deep state. And she basically says, the war is over, guys. I know you're thinking about fighting and, thinking about alignments and how you're going to get control of this, but the war is over. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner we can all move on with our lives. Now, we're going to move on regardless of what these crazy people do, but it's to their advantage to recognize that things have changed. And yeah, it's not the old plan. And whatever being told you that you were going to be in control of the whole planet and, have all this money, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. We are on a different timeline. We are moving forward with the restoration of our planet. Get up or get off. Right? Go somewhere else. I almost wish they could just teleport to another planet. Apparently, that's not something that Source is going to allow to happen. But who knows? They don't have their entire brain with them. Kim talks about that more. It's like, when you've been implanted with these etherical devices and essentially controlled based on whatever bloodline you were from, you start to act really weird. And that's why they keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's never going to work out for them. And in the meantime, we are moving forward. And that wraps up our episode for today. If you want more information or learn more about us and, see all of our really cool work that we put out, head on over to unitednetwork.earth. If you want to become a member, that's awesome. That will give you instant updates, all of the information we put out each week, including our news updates, all of Kim's reports, and all things restoration as we move forward with creating the world that we've always dreamed of. This is The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.